Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the largest invasion of a neighboring country in Europe since World War II. The Russian military attacking from the south, the north, the east, taking out military installations and moving closer tonight on strategic cities. This evening, the Pentagon believes they could be closing in on the capital of Kyiv. Pentagon officials saying the Russians want to surround the city and, quote, decapitate the government. Tonight, President Biden laying the deaths, the carnage at Putin's feet, telling the American people today and the world that Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, he said, and now he and his country will bear the consequences. All day today, the wrenching images of war, Russian military vehicles and tanks rolling through a Ukrainian checkpoint from Belarus. Images circulating online showing what appear to be Russian helicopters sweeping in during an assault on a military base about 20 miles outside the capital of Kyiv. Another concern tonight, Russian vehicles at Chernobyl nuclear site. The Russians are now in control of that nuclear plant, some 60 miles from Kyiv. Of course, the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster back in 1986, and where there are still vast amounts of dangerous nuclear waste entombed there. Despite Russian claims tonight, reports of some missiles striking civilian targets falling on this neighborhood near the capital. And in Ukraine's second largest city tonight, Ukrainians now taking shelter in the subways in Kharkiv. Parents with their children huddling underground now for safety. Some asking, what does Putin want? Still unclear why this is all happening. The scene at bus and train stations tonight, the desperate attempt to get to safety, and world leaders are already warning tonight of a refugee crisis now looming. President Biden meeting today with his national security team and a virtual meeting with G7 leaders. The president then addressing the American people on Russian banks, the sanctions tonight, and moves to limit exports to Russia. The president saying our allies are in full support of these new sanctions. Moments ago here, I spoke with Secretary of State Blinken. I asked him why not sanction Vladimir Putin himself? And what are they seeing right now around Kyiv? Does the Biden administration tonight believe the capital will fall in the next 24 hours? But we're going to begin tonight with our senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell on the ground in Kyiv. Again tonight.
Russia unleashing a brutal military assault on Ukraine, invading this vast nation from the north, south and east. The attacks seen in videos posted online from inside Ukraine. After bitter fighting, Russian forces now reportedly in control of Chernobyl, the destroyed nuclear plant just 60 miles from the capital Kyiv. US military sources say they believe the Russians are driving on Kyiv to surround and, quote, decapitate the government there. We saw fighter jets flying over the city this morning as emergency air raid sirens wailed. A large number of Russian helicopters seen on social media posts attacking a military base less than 20 miles from the center of the capital, triggering a pitched battle. The Russians launching over 160 ballistic missiles and rockets on military installations across Ukraine, but also reportedly hitting some civilian targets. Here, an enormous unexploded rocket's lodged in the ceiling of an apartment building in Kharkiv, close to the Russian border. And here, a jet missile wedged into a damaged road. Intense fightings reported around Kharkiv, and thousands have been forced to shelter in the subways. Columns of Russian tanks and armoured vehicles are reported to be still pouring across the Ukrainian border tonight. Swarms of helicopters flying in low over the countryside, creating panic and terror for the people living there. Even so, military sources say less than half of Russia's 150,000 troops have entered the country. But they're now facing off against a Ukrainian army of 250,000, but that's less sophisticated and powerful. Europe hasn't seen an invasion of this size since World War II. Martial law's been declared across the country, and all men of fighting age and reservists are being mobilized. The capital's now under curfew, and like other major cities, roads were jammed today, with people trying to flee from the onslaught. There have been massive lines at gas stations, and residents desperate for cash are lining up for hours at ATMs. Three friends, all from Donbass in eastern Ukraine, in Maidan Square, where Ukraine turned its back on Russia in its 2014 revolution, showing support for their country.
We are not afraid. We are ready to defend our country.
Marichka Podolko is a morning news anchor in Ukraine. Tonight, her husband's at war and her children hiding in safety in the West.
I think that's the worst scenario that we could expect. I never expected it to be so bad, but I never expected Ukraine to be so calm and strong.
Шановні громадяни України.
Ukraine's President Zelensky trying to rally his country tonight, but acknowledging their losses. Officials say at least 40 Ukrainian service members have been killed, as well as dozens of civilians. Zelensky saying the fiercest fighting is in the south, where Russians are advancing from Crimea, adding that some Russian soldiers have been captured. Around the world, the Russian offensive is being condemned. The Pentagon tonight saying it'll now deploy 7,000 more US troops to Europe. President Biden met with his national security team this morning and said the world will hold Russia accountable.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
But Biden didn't sanction Putin himself, choosing instead new penalties on 4 more Russian banks and some of the country's elite. Putin's claimed he has no intention of occupying Ukraine and warned other countries not to interfere, threatening retaliation the likes of which, quote, you've never experienced in your history. But tonight, as Russian forces try to push deeper into the heart of the country, the question is how far will Putin go and how long can the Ukrainians hold out?
And so let's bring in Ian Panel from the Ukrainian capital again with us tonight. And Ian, I want to get to the news breaking as we're on the air tonight. President Zelensky speaking this evening, saying that Putin has made him a target. And what do we know about this ongoing battle outside Kyiv tonight?
Yeah, that's right. President Zelensky saying that he is target number 1, his family now in hiding. And this battle is critical because it's only 20 miles northwest of the capital. Both Ukrainian and Russian forces battling it out for control, and that could decide how much the capital comes under fire. David?
And Ian, I wanted to get back to your reporting there that the Russians are now in control of the Chernobyl nuclear plant. We took World News viewers to the exclusion zone and the communities around it some years back here. We remember, of course, the children, the families hopeful for their futures, but they were always aware of the dangerous nuclear waste that remained there. What are authorities saying about Chernobyl tonight and the security of that facility?
Yeah, I mean, the fighting around Chernobyl certainly raising concerns about the potential for some kind of disaster. But tonight, despite reports that it has fallen into Russian hands, the authorities are insisting that those nuclear facilities are safe and secure. David?
Ian Panel leading the way with our reporting again tonight. Ian, thank you. And just before we came on the air this evening, we asked Secretary of State Antony Blinken why the U.S. hasn't sanctioned Putin directly, what they're seeing just outside Kyiv right now, and is there a chance that Vladimir Putin goes beyond Ukraine? Secretary Blinken, thanks for coming on again tonight. We heard the president list these new sanctions today against several Russian banks, among other steps being taken. The president also said direct sanctions against Vladimir Putin himself are still on the table here. You've got Putin invading Ukraine from the north, the east, the south, ignoring all calls from the U.S. to stop. So why is the U.S. not sanctioning him right now?
Well, first of all, David, the sanctions that we've taken, not just us, in coordination with European partners and allies, are going to have severe consequences on Russia. Some immediate, some that play out over time. We've taken 10 largest financial institutions holding about 80% of Russia's banking assets, can't do transactions in dollars or for the most part in euros. The ability for Russia to raise money on international markets, we're taking that away. Their ability to import the technology necessary to modernize their economy, to put into critical industries like defense, like aerospace, that too being taken away. And this is going to have a very significant impact. Now, having said that, as the president said, other things remain on the table. If they continue to escalate, we'll have the ability to do the same thing.
Is there any sign here, though, that Putin cares about these sanctions? The threats don't appear to be working so far.
You know, sanctions have an immediate impact. We're seeing that in terms of Russia's currency, in terms of its markets. But the impact is really felt over time as, again, it spreads across the economy about their ability to raise money, to conduct transactions around the world. That will be felt more and more and more over time. So if this continues, the pain will continue, the pain will grow, and that's going to have an effect, too.
But to be clear here, you are willing to sanction Putin directly if you have to?
As the president said, everything's on the table, including that.
I want to ask you about the fighting we know that's taking place at a military airfield about 20 miles from the capital of Kyiv. Do we know who's in control of that airfield tonight, and is it possible Kyiv falls in the next 24 hours?
I'm not in a position to comment on exactly what's going on the ground at this moment, but what we do know, and part of the Russian plan has been to put Kyiv in danger, to assault the capital, to go after other major cities. We're seeing forces come in from the north, from the east, from the south, and that's all part of the plan that we've laid out for the world in recent weeks.
You're convinced Putin's going to overthrow this government?
I'm convinced he's going to try to do that.
We've seen Ukrainians fight back the resistance to the Russians in the east. Is there any chance the Ukrainians can hold on here?
You know, one of the things that Vladimir Putin has done, starting back in 2014 when they first went into Ukraine, seizing Crimea, seizing a part of eastern Ukraine, is to totally alienate the Ukrainian people from Russia. Before 2014, actually, Russia was pretty popular in Ukraine. It had a 70% favorability rating. Right now, it's exactly the opposite, more than the opposite. 90% of Ukrainians now, if I can use the word, detest Russia and certainly detest President Putin. My prediction would be that one way or another, they will strongly resist any effort to take away their sovereignty, take away their independence, take away their government.
They'll resist, but can they beat the Russians here?
You know, whether it's in the near term, whether it's in the medium term, whether it's in the long term, I'm convinced that democracy and the independence of Ukraine is going to prevail.
Secretary Blinken, I know you know there are a lot of people watching tonight likely wondering, could Vladimir Putin go further here? The president was asked today, what if this goes beyond Ukraine? And he said, if Putin moves into NATO countries, we will be involved. He said, we will be involved. Is this a possibility?
Is it a possibility that Putin goes beyond Ukraine? Sure, it's a possibility, but there's something very powerful standing in the way of that. There's something we call Article 5 of NATO. That means an attack on one member of NATO is an attack on all members of NATO. The president's been very clear that we will defend every inch of NATO territory. I think that's the most powerful deterrent against President Putin going beyond Ukraine.
You know, the president has said all along U.S. troops will not fight in Ukraine against the Russians. But again, this hypothetical, if he goes beyond Ukraine and into NATO, given what you just cited, that means all bets are off the table here.
Well, it's not a question, David, of all bets being off the table. It's being very clear that we are committed to Article 5. We're committed to defending our NATO allies. And if it comes to that, we'll do it. But right now, our focus is on Ukraine. Our focus is on trying to prevent President Putin from going even further. But it looks like he's going for everything he can get. And so we're doing what we said we would do all along. We're imposing massive costs. We're doing it with allies and partners. We're doing it together. We're doing it swiftly. And you've seen that already today.
Secretary Blinken, we do appreciate your time again tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Good to be with you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.